All right, looks like I'm live. Well, this is the very first live stream that uh, I'm willing to take on and willing to do for the sake of humanity and for the whole crypto community. Um, it is actually something that has been a long time coming. I've had an interest in wanting to do live broadcasting for much of my life, and the conditions have finally come together to make it happen. So here it is. Um, when this is over, it will be published on my Facebook page, and the announcements for it each day will be published on my Twitter page. Uh, so if you're watching the playback from Facebook and you want to catch this while it's live, then you can either subscribe to my YouTube channel or you can just check in each morning and see if I'm on. The objective will be to get started first thing in the morning, um, preferably by 9 o'clock my time here in Arizona. So I've already sent the invite out to my Twitter account, so we'll see if anybody actually shows up. Uh, I have an interest in many different subjects, so I'll be talking about whatever I want to talk about. And of course, any type of engagement that comes in will direct uh, the flow of the conversation also. Um, but anyway, uh, yeah, so here it is. Uh, it's, I have to admit, I'm somewhat nervous doing this. It's one thing to make a video, it's another thing to be live. And I remember back when I lived in Pennsylvania, uh, there was a talk show that I listened to kind of reluctantly. I worked at a telecommunications company, and the guys in the warehouse, they listened to what is called sports talk radio, WIP. And there was this DJ on there, and his name was Howard Eskin. And he was in the afternoon, and somebody came on his show one time, and they were just razzing this guy about being a DJ, that, there's no talent that's involved in, being on the radio. And, you just sit there and talk. And Howard was just like, okay, buddy, well, I'll tell you what, you think you're so smart. I'll just let you take over my show. And he basically goes quiet, and there's like 20 seconds of dead air. The guy just freezes up and says nothing. And Howard just starts blasting this guy. He's like, well, come on, you trying to get me fired or something? Because in radio, dead air means the loss of listeners. And this guy couldn't say anything. So Howard was making the point that there is a real talent that is involved in being live on the air. And it's not for everybody. And I'm learning right now whether or not it's actually for me or not. So, like I said, I'm a little nervous. I'm not sure, if I have what it takes to be a content producer. I'm glad Hex Kong is here. We met in Florida a couple years ago, and I consider him a friend. And of course, Marjorie is like a mother to me, so I'm glad that she's here to be supportive in all of this. So, um, as I was saying earlier, the desire to want to be alive is something that has been on me for much of my life. As someone who was alive before the internet and even before personal computers came out, um, as a kid, the only way to have a public platform, to just be a regular person off the street and have a public platform was through something called CB radios. And they were really popular in the 70s. My dad had one in his car. But broadcasting at one time was a licensed activity. Not just anybody could do it. We didn't have YouTube back in the mid 20th century. And the desire to want to be like a radio personality was something that I had as a teenager. And I remember having dinner with my best friend and his dad and stepmom, and I was telling them about wanting to be on the radio. And his stepmom was a teacher, and they were both like, "Well, if you're serious about this, then you really ought to consider going to college and getting a degree in communication before uh, pursuing this." And at the time, I found out about a broadcasting school in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I was planning on going to that. And they're like, "Well, that doesn't sound like an accredited school. If you go there, you really can't expect to like get a job as a radio personality. You need some kind of accreditation. You need to build up a resume if you're going to get in the door." Uh, so I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't have the money to go to school at that time anyway. And before I was even able to do that, the opportunity opened up for me to move to Arizona the first time. And then I decided to go that and pursue a career in broadcasting. But this is something, even still, I've wanted to do for a long time. And, I've made individual YouTube videos over the years. And in the process of moving, uh, things happened that triggered an interest in multiple academic disciplines, things like science, math, health, geography, and particularly politics and religion, which are two of my favorite things to talk about, and they will be fundamental to the variety that I plan to bring to this space. And I want to say hello to Clyde and John. Thank you for taking the time to listen to whatever I have to say. Um, anyway, one of the points I was getting at is there is a talent that is needed that if you're going to be live, you have to be willing to do a monologue, meaning you just talk to the camera and pretend that nobody's there. And that's not always easy. So it makes it, that much more appreciative, the fact that there are people here in the chat that are willing to listen and contribute whatever. But anyway, when I was, a teenager, I was a big fan of a guy named Howard Stern, and that was another motivation for me to want to get involved in broadcasting. And so I do have a little list of notes here that I'm looking at for things that I want to talk about. And of course, if you're going to talk, you know, you do have to have a little drink once in a while. So if you'll indulge me. But obviously, the bulk of what I will be talking about on here will revolve around the role of crypto and particularly the Richard Hart ecosystem and what it contributes. And yeah, Hex Kong says that Howard Stern was amazing. My dad used to listen to him on the way to work. Let's see if, yeah. Howard Stern was amazing. My dad used to listen to him on the way to work every day. He changed, man. Politics destroyed him. Yeah. Howard is, yeah, I listened to him for a long time when I was a teenager, and he changed quite a bit over the years. It's amazing the things that he got away with saying and doing on air. I mean, he got sued by the FCC a couple of times, and yeah, he was quite a character. And of course, when you're a teenager, you just gobble all that up. But yeah, he's still around. Actually, to be honest, the real breaking point between Howard and I, as far as a listener, came in 1995 when Jerry Garcia died. Him and his whole cast and all the listeners, everybody was just making fun of this, and it really, uh, it was a big turnoff because at one point Gary walked in and Gary was like, "Howard, you just received another death threat," and they cut the broadcast and they went to commercials, and when they came back, they dropped the subject altogether, and I thought that was just real cowardly on his part. I mean, it's bad enough that you're making fun of somebody who had passed away that literally hundreds of thousands of people are mourning over, and you're making it into a joke, and then, when the rubber meets the road, you basically cop out like a coward. So that just kind of ruined all that. But yeah, he's not the same as he used to be. But anyway, um, a lot of what I do want to talk about on here does revolve around the role of crypto and its potential for impacting uh, society and life in general. And one of my goals in doing these live streams is to reach out to a broader audience than just the crypto space. I don't want this to be just another echo chamber for people. And the fact of the matter is, there's like 90 different blockchains out there, and there's like tens of thousands, like at least 20,000 different cryptos out there. And I'm not going to take the time to talk about all of them. I'm mainly going to focus on three at a time. And before I mention those, I just want to say good morning to Corey. Thanks for stopping in, man. It looks like you're back on the island, and if that's the case, then let me know when you're back in Arizona so we can meet up. But anyway, the three main cryptos that I want to talk about on here for now, for the time being, are going to be Hex, Com, and Ink, because I believe that those three are the three most pertinent assets that are in the space right now. And what's really interesting is you can get all three of those for free if you acquire them according to the conditions. Um, so cool. Corey's back in Arizona. Yeah, I'd like to meet up with you again. We'll talk about that privately. But yeah, Um, Hex, Com, and Inc are my 3 personal favorite cryptos right now, and those are the only ones that I'm going to talk about specifically on this show as far as the crypto aspect is concerned. And I have a goal involving each one of those 3 that I'm working on to try and bring to pass, at least to the best of my ability. For Hex, the goal is for a T share to be the same price as a Bitcoin. And I've tweeted about this recently. And right now, Bitcoin is like, I haven't looked at the chart recently, but it's like 30 some, maybe 40 some $1,000s for a Bitcoin. And the price of the T share in Hex is in Hex itself. And right now, you need almost 32,000 Hex to get 1 T share. So if Hex was worth $1, then you would need $32,000 worth of Hex to get a T share. So if Hex was $2, that would be $64,000, and that would be somewhere close to the all-time high of Bitcoin. So that's the goal surrounding Hex right now, is for Hex to be the same price, the Hex T share to be the same price as a Bitcoin, because Hex brings more to the table than what Bitcoin does. And I'll probably get into a longer explanation of that at another time. But my second coin that I favor is COM, and that's short for Communis. And as Johnny Sachs has brought out in what he calls the secret weapon, COM is it's a coin that you can claim for free if you stake Hex for at least 6 months. And if you stake it for a year, you can claim both what is called a start bonus and an end bonus. And the goal with COM is to acquire what Johnny refers to as the 100% coupon rate. And yes, HexCon, communis is the Latin word for community. That's why it's called communis. It's not communist with a T. Communist is a person who subscribes to the economic philosophy and theory of Karl Marx. Communist, the coin, does not do that. People, that's easy to get confused. So yeah, it's communist.app. That's the name of the website. But COM is the ticker symbol, so we call it COM for short. And the goal surrounding COM is to have the coupon rate, which is the start bonus that you can receive. We want to have the dollar value of that start bonus be equal to the dollar value of the Hex stake that you start. So, for example, let's say a person stakes $100 worth of Hex for 15 years. The goal with COM is for that person to be able to claim $100 worth of COM for making that Hex stake. Obviously, we're not there at the moment, but I'm doing what I can to get us there. And that's mainly just buying COM and holding on to it, not selling any of it. And there's other things that you can do. You can become a liquidity provider for the Hex-COM pair to create price stability for the COM token. Because as Johnny brings out in his video where he explains the secret weapon, if somebody just market buys a giant bag of COM and holds it, that will drive the price up. But because there's no liquidity, somebody can make the price drop down just as precipitously by doing a large market sell. So that, that would work on an individual basis, but to have long-term price stability and have the secret or the secret weapon function as it is designed, then it needs price stability, which comes through providing liquidity. But that's my goal in relationship to Calm, is to have that coupon rate at 100%. Once we get there, then I will introduce another coin to talk about and focus on as a goal is concerned, um, rather than Calm itself. And then, of course, the third coin that I'm focused on at this time is the incentive token. And the incentive token is, again, it's something that you can earn for free if you provide liquidity on the PulseX exchange. And you specifically have to provide liquidity in what is called the farm, which is a separate set of trading pairs where if you provide the assets to that pair, you can receive what are called LP tokens, which you can then stake, and then you receive the incentive token as a result of that participation. So my goal in relationship to Inc. is to do whatever I can to help the DAO get launched. The DAO, meaning decentralized autonomous organization, is voting power where people who hold the Inc. token, based on the number they hold, they have voting power that will allow them to have a voice as far as what additional trading pairs will be introduced into the farm. So my goal is to do whatever I can to help get that started. Ultimately, it's the devs that are going to be pulling the trigger to get that going. I'm sure Richard has a say-so in that also. But once that launches, then I will substitute Calm or Inc. with whatever other token or asset that I will talk about, promote, and have some kind of goal towards. The fact of the matter is, I do hold lots of assets since, being involved in this ecosystem. It's kind of interesting. Before Hex launched, I had a whole bunch of assets. And then when Hex launched, I only had Hex. And now, since Pulse Chain has come along, now I have a whole bunch of different assets again. And not all of them are Richard Heart assets. And I have them because I favor them for one reason or another. But again, I'm not going to promote all of them. I'm only going to focus on 3 at a time because, like I said, my objective is for these live streams to reach an audience outside of crypto. And, granted that happens, I don't want to confuse people because the crypto space can be very, very confusing. It can be confusing for people who actually enjoy this space and participate in it, much less how confusing it could be for people who are no coiners, who are not familiar with this space. So that's the crypto aspect of it. And as I do these streams, my objective is going to be for each one to be an hour long, at least an hour long. And then depending on what kind of participation and engagement is involved, that will determine, whether I go beyond an hour. When Richard first started streaming, um, he just talked about whatever, and whatever was brought up in the chat directed the subject matter and the length of his streams. And he would go on for hours. I mean, I remember he did an 8-hour live stream. Like, he literally got on the internet, got on YouTube, and he talked for 8 hours. And he didn't, he wasn't just regurgitating the same old stuff. I mean, he went just continually just going on and on and on. So, I don't know if I have the wherewithal to do that, but if the audience demands it, I will step up to the plate and do whatever I must. But again, that just is based on the engagement that is involved. So, as I said, my objective is going to be to just come online every morning and speak for an hour before I get on with my day. And I agree with you, Corey. Once you get a lot of comments in the chat, streaming becomes easy. I was invited onto a stream with someone recently, and we went on for 4 hours, and it just went like a flash. It was great. So we'll see how things go here. But I do want to stream every day. And now the time of the day is going to fluctuate. Preferably, I'm going to go on around this time, just wake up, get freshed up, have a little breakfast, and come online. But on Wednesday, I do have a prior commitment in the morning, and I won't be available Wednesday morning, so I'd probably come on later in the afternoon. And then on Saturday, I would probably come on later in the afternoon also. But consistency is the key, as was mentioned earlier. And I've known that for a long time. It's like you really don't have to be good at something. If you just keep doing it, you'll get successful. And you don't have to be smart. You don't have to be talented. You just have to be consistent. So that is something that I can be if need be. So, but as I said before, I do have interests in other subjects outside of crypto. And I've been an avid reader for all my life. So there's just a lot of material that I could introduce to keep things going. And one of the reasons that came to be is, as I said earlier, I moved to Arizona when I was 22. And before I moved here the first time, I had come to a place in life where I had to make a choice. And I had to make a choice on whether, because of my upbringing, I had to make a choice as to whether I was going to relate to the Bible as rather as, is this book fiction or is it nonfiction? And the only way I could make that decision was to read it. Now, in most cases, people just say, well, I say it's fiction because I say so, or I say it's nonfiction because I say so. Well, I'd come to a point in life where living according to what I say so wasn't really an option. Um, I need knowledge. Presumption doesn't work for me. So, um, for a while, I tried to just bypass that whole fork in the road of life. And the more I tried to do that, the more frustrating life got. So eventually, I did started reading that. And in the midst of that, that prompted me to want to learn more about the things I should have learned in school, things like history, government, geography, math, science, all that stuff. So I started looking into these other subjects too. And that's why I want to talk about a lot of these other things because they're worth talking about. Probably the only thing that I don't like to talk about is sports. I personally think sports is really just a tremendous waste of time and a distraction. And even people that are into sports, if you ask somebody, who won the Super Bowl 4 years ago, they would probably have a difficult time answering that without the help of Google. So it's like even people that are into sports, aren't really into it. It's just kind of a for the moment euphoric experience. And life is just more to me than that. But I tend to avoid the news media also. Um, I get introduced to enough news related material on Twitter more than I even prefer to find out myself. So usually don't access news sources. I just I'm not that concerned about the things that are going on in this world because this world is not my home, and the kingdoms of this world are not my kingdom. So I tend to not get distracted by things that the news media feeds people's minds with. Um, but for the sake of this show, I may access those things periodically just as having subject matter to talk about. Um, I'm just now, starting to play around with this software and learning how to use the different features. So as time goes on, I will, expand on the way I present material on here rather than just having me talk to the camera. I mean, I'm sure that can get kind of monotonous for people that are watching this. So these are things I'm just thinking out loud as far as things that I would like to do to, you know, bring some substance to the show. Um, but um, as I said, there's material that can be introduced. Another thing that I want to talk about on here, uh, I want to offer what I call the Hexagon of the Day award. I want to basically give a shout out to one particular person that is involved in the Richard Hart ecosystem, particularly in Hex, and why I, bring this person's to the public attention because I believe in creating community. And that was the thing that uh, really uh, grabbed my attention when I first learned about Bitcoin back in 2011. Um, was the prospect that cryptocurrency serves in creating connection among people. And it would be that connection that would make the mad gains worth the gains that you get. Because what's the point of being rich if you're all alone and everybody hates you? That's the problem. I don't feel sorry for the elites of this world, but most of the rich people in this world, they don't have a lot of close friends. They have a lot of close enemies, and they have a multitude of external enemies who hate them because a lot of people get rich on the backs of other people. And, they exploit ideas to their own interests. And, what kind of quality of life is that? I mean, you know, I'd rather have a lot of friends and a lot of loved ones and less money than be super rich and have everybody hate me. So when I found out about Bitcoin, that to me, that was the connection that it made in my mind was the utility that it can serve in creating connection with people or among people. So, um, there's a song that was popular when I was younger called Behind Blue Eyes that was written by The Who, and I think it's been covered by other people since then. That's what that song is about. Uh, it's about the super rich and how isolated and alienated they are from the rest of society, you know, because of how they got there. So, that's that's why I've come up with this idea called the Hexagon of the Day Award to showcase somebody in the Hex community that is doing something that is trying to create community and create connection among those of us who use the product. And while I'm on that subject, I've been thinking about this the last couple days. Who would I give the first Hexagon of the Day award to? Because this is a very prestigious award. You want to do what you can to get this. But I would like to give the first Hexagon of the Day award to someone that I met at my first Hex meetup, which was in Idaho. And he goes by the name of Seth Mendoza on Twitter. And I believe he's a day one Hexagon. And he introduced someone to Hex who is a Vietnam veteran. And he made a video interview with this man. I don't remember his name exactly, but he got into Hex and he was explaining, why he liked Hex and why he got into it. And just paying attention to Seth's tweets from that time, I just felt a real rapport with him. And I was looking forward to meeting him in Idaho at that first meetup. And when I got there, the first person I met there was a man who was about my age, who goes by the name of Exploring Idaho on Twitter. And I thought that was Seth Mendoza when I met him. And he's like, no, that's not me. And then this really young guy who was, I'm 6'4", so everybody's shorter than me. But this young guy who was considerably shorter than me comes out. He's very energetic and he introduces himself. And I'm like, you're Seth Mendoza? He's like, yeah. And I was just really shocked to, meet this person, seeing that he was so much younger than me. I mean, he looked like he was young enough to be my son. But I was really impressed with his professional conduct and his demeanor. And, we've talked a couple of times on the phone since then. We met up again in Las Vegas. And I just really appreciate everything that Seth has contributed to Hex and our space. And recently, he has uh, expressed public support for the secret weapon that I mentioned earlier, which is the use of COM as an automatic marketing network for Hex. And I don't find it coincidental that right after he publicly expressed his support of this fusion, that the value of COM started going up. I noticed on the price chart. And of course, I tweeted something about that. And, I don't know if he had any direct involvement, but, I believe character has a way of getting things accomplished behind the scenes that we may not have direct involvement with. And I just respect Seth Mendoza's character a lot. And that's why I'm presenting him with the very first Hexagon of the Day award. Too bad he's not here to receive it, and too bad I don't have something like a plaque or something that is an official award with somebody's name on it, but it's the thought that counts. But, you know, my goal, another goal I have with this live stream and the following ones is to simply build people up, to help people, do whatever, to motivate them to want to build character and contribute, things to our space that just creates community and builds people up. Because I believe this is the number one thing that will attract people to the asset, is the fact that there are people involved, that other people who are observers out there want to be connected to. That's a good point, Kong. I'll write it on paper so the awards can be screenshotted. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't have a pen near me. So starting tomorrow, I'll make a list and just have an updated list of people that I point out as hexagons of the day, people who are doing their part to add real value to our space. And that's the value of character. So these are the things that are coming to me as far as what will be the building blocks of my show. It's other people, like I mentioned, Howard Stern before. He got famous on controversy. That was the basis of his show, which is being outrageous, controversial. A lot of people took offense at the things that he talked about because he was just, basically a pervert, a lot of perverted stuff and things of that nature. And, that was the basis for him to gain an audience and be controversial. And that worked for him. But I don't want to go that route. I have a different approach in mind, and I have a different goal in mind also. And the fact of the matter is, it's like one of the organizing principles of this world is that of competition. And I don't go along with that principle. I operate on a different principle that is more on the aspect of cooperation. And recently it was on Maddie's live stream where he did the 100 YouTubers at one time. I was in the back room with DJ Cryptomatic, and he was talking about, his involvement with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin space and the community that has organized around Bitcoin is so much different than what we have in Hex. And I realized that the reason for that is that Bitcoin is competitive. The way Bitcoin comes into existence and through its system of mining is competitive. People compete for hash rate. And because there's a scarcity mindset, there's only 21 million coins, so there's not enough for everybody. So people are fighting over the coins. Miners fight over hash power to mine the coins into existence. And therefore, the community that organizes around that product is competitive. That breeds maximalism. And, when things like FTX come into play and people give their private keys away and lose all their money, people who don't fall for that, publicly they'll say how terrible that is. But in reality, they're glad that people are getting wrecked because that's just more of the pie for them. And, the quality of community that organizes around that product, even though that's more of the way of the world, to me, that's just not how I operate, and that's not what I want to produce. And fortunately, Hex is designed in a way that doesn't breed competition because T-shares are available to everybody fairly. There's no favoritism involved. And the fact that the product inflates at a fixed rate of 3.69% a year, there's always more of the asset coming online. Now, granted, that 3.69% is distributed strictly to the T-share holders, not to everybody. It's just the people who stake and have shares. So that incentivizes people to stake. And as I said, shares are publicly available to everybody. You don't need special hardware. You don't need any kind of advantage to get shares. Now, granted, the price per share in Hex is programmed to always go up over time, and the price of Hex consequently makes the price of shares more expensive. So people who did buy at the beginning, they had a financial advantage, but that's pretty much the case with any kind of asset or any kind of, thing that is introduced to the market. So that's another big distinction between Hex and many other assets that are out there. And something came to me recently in relationship to this. I went to the Arizona Libertarian State Convention. It was a couple weeks ago. I went there representing my county. And we had like 6 different people who spoke there who are wanting to be the Libertarian presidential candidate in the upcoming presidential election. And I spoke with 3 of them directly, the 3 that I personally favor out of the 6. I spoke with each one directly. And I was telling them about the role of decentralized finance and how if they would take the time to be a little more informed on this subject, that they can use that as a talking point to draw attention to their prospective campaigns. I wasn't necessarily shilling Hex and Pulse Chain to them, but I was trying to initiate a conversation with them where I could introduce these things as examples of decentralized finance. And it was really kind of disheartening talking to these guys. I mean, they just weren't getting it. And I realized after the fact that the reason they weren't getting it is because of the libertarians' devotion to what is called Austrian economics. That's a really big deal to libertarians, is this whole thing of Austrian economics. And in a nutshell, what Austrian economics is basically a narrative that inflation is evil. And, you know, I can see why they come from that conclusion, that inflation is evil, because their only point of reference to a source of inflation is the Federal Reserve. And when the Federal Reserve inflates the money supply, yes, that has a way of defrauding the labor of people who use dollars, the United States dollar, which is, practically the whole world. And, the real evil isn't necessarily inflation, the practice of inflation. It's the distribution of inflation that opens the door for evil to flourish. And this is the point that I was trying to make when I was talking to these guys, and they wouldn't hear it. It's like they were beholden to the Federal Reserve, even though they'll tout this narrative of ending the Fed. What do you replace the Fed with? And that's what I was trying to get across to them. But again, it was like talking to a brick wall. Inflation isn't evil. It's the matter of how inflation is distributed that allows evil to occur. And as I just said, with Hex, although it does inflate, that inflation is accessible to anybody. Anybody can acquire T-shares and receive a distribution of the inflation. And the rate of inflation is fixed at 3.69% a year. What that means is that fixed rate can serve as a platform for building some kind of economic model that Hex would serve. And I got disrupted there because I'm looking at an icon on my screen, and apparently, although I have a stable internet connection, my software is not receiving it very well. So I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this and see how well the quality of the internet is, because obviously that's going to be an issue in doing future shows. I recently got Tesla Starlink, and that was basically the missing link in being able to do live streams. Is where I live here in Arizona. For the past 8 years, I have not had consistent internet service. So that's been a factor in why I haven't been able to do these uh, these live streams that I've wanted to do for as long as I have. But anyway, um, as I was saying, um, you know, Hex brings a lot more to the table than a lot of people may realize. It's one of my objectives to make this clear to people who are out there, who are not part of this space, the so-called no coiners, as we refer to them as. So, it looks like I'm coming down to my last 5 minutes as far as this particular stream is concerned. And again, I want to thank everyone who took the time to come on here and were willing to engage with me. This is going to be great. As I said, I feel a little more comfortable now that I literally, made it to the end of one stream. But yeah, I have a variety of backgrounds that I can put on here. Again, I'm going to be experimenting with some of this stuff. As a matter of fact, as a way of coming to an end here, maybe I'll try an experiment here. I will do a picture-in-picture layout and okay. Oh, it's wanting me to. Okay. There's some more settings that I have to do here. Oh, here we go. So, I got this to work. So yeah, I can comment on the stuff that people say on Twitter. This is something that I can contribute. Hey, here's a post from Kyler Kaufman. I've met Kyler on a few occasions. He's taken some pictures of me. He's a great guy. He will definitely be in the run-up for future awards. Oh, and now I can view it as I'm doing it. Okay. So, anyway. Yeah, this is going to be fun. But yeah, I've been going for almost an hour here. I think I'm going to come to an end for today. As I said earlier, I'm going to post the recording of this on my Facebook page. So if you access this recording from Facebook and you do want to watch it live, you can either subscribe to me on YouTube or you can just check in on my YouTube channel in the morning and see if I'm online. Anyway, I look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow and doing more. So see you later, everybody. We'll talk again tomorrow.